It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interviews.
There's going to be much higher expectations, sense of awareness of what we bring to the table.
Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Sproles, ends it. Yes! Caught! Touchdown! They did it!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Full Court Press. Jason Walker, Eric Frandsen. I almost missed coming in for the music because I was trying to figure out which set of headphones over here. We mentioned yesterday on the show, it's a cluttered mess in here right now, and because of all the remodels that are going on. So
yeah, just as we're getting ready to start the show, they're like crews in here moving their stuff out of the way. Like, you guys, you okay? We're gonna start a show here in less than 60 seconds. Yep. Oh, we're good.
It's like we don't want to get in your way, because they got a job to do and we got a job to do, and we're all trying to get those jobs done at the same time without getting in each other's way.
Yes.
So it's fun. They've done a really good job, though. They've done an excellent job so far.
Yes.
So lots to talk about today. I mentioned on social media earlier today, and we teased this yesterday, that we were going to do our official predictions, our official Full Court Press predictions with Jason Walker and Eric Frandsen.
Yeah.
Game by game, we're going to go through it all, what we think Utah State's final record will be, and also giving, specifying which games we think are going to be wins, which will be losses. So we'll be going all in. I put it out on social media, and you're also welcome to chime in on the text line what you think the record will be. I know I've already gotten some responses on social media, so we'll go through those, kind of alongside ours, We're all putting our predictions out there today, before game week. Get your, throw your hat in the ring. Let's see who's right, who's wrong. I've seen some people who are very pessimistic. I've seen, I think maybe more than I was expecting, several people who are fairly optimistic. And I'll be honest, going through these games, I was kind of, I'd hold myself back with some of these games, picking maybe the Aggies to win. Just thinking, okay, the Aggies aren't going to be that good, right? And I don't want to, discount other teams and say, oh, they're not going to be good, and just say, oh, the Aggies will beat them. So it's kind of hard balancing all these different things where I'm seeing avenues for the Aggies to win certain games, but I can't just pick them solely because of that one little thing. Although I did do that twice on my predictions. I'm picking the Aggies to win for one specific reason. That isn't even necessarily a good one, but I'm going with it because I'm going to be bold in a couple of cases.
I had legit, and I just made note of it, I had 4 games that were where I was on the fence. And I'm 2-2 in those games and what I put down.
Yeah, I'm probably similar. I didn't really count how many games I was really on the fence with. Well, heck, there's probably 5 games that I could say I'm at least partially on the fence with. And I think I have the Aggies going 3-2 in those ones. Heck, you can even say 6. There's so many games where I could see that, I think there's 6 that are somewhere in the realm of up in the air.
Yeah. As I look through this, and I'm trying to do my research, I'm looking at the opponents, kind of get my feel for what the season looks like for Utah State. And there were a number where I felt easy. That I know that's going to be a loss. I know that's going to be a victory. So there were a number of them that were filled out, and thought, okay, pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. I think we got that. But then you start filling out the rest of it, and it's and then there were a few that I just wrestled with. I've got scribbles all over my page.
Yeah, I only have a couple of scribbles. I got to the end, and I scribbled out one and changed my answer, and that changed my overall record. So I've limited it to that. So hopefully I won't change my mind in the middle of our prediction and be like, no, scribble that one out too. We'll see.
And I reserve the right to change my opinion.
Well, I'm putting my predictions out here as their predictions.
Yes.
When we get into the middle of the season, I will have changed my mind about several things.
Sure. We'll just have more data. We'll have more knowledge, more information, a better feel, not only for Utah State, but also their opponents, just how things are rolling. So, what are your predictions for this upcoming season for Utah State football? We're just a little over a week away, September 2nd at Iowa. Hawkeyes may not have their starting quarterback, may not have their backup quarterback.
May not have their, they won't have
their starting defensive tackle. So, what are your predictions for the season? I'm not asking for predictions for that game. We'll get into that more next week. We'll do score predictions game by game.
Your season prediction should include that game, because otherwise you'll be one short.
Yes.
But send us in the predictions, 435-339-0321. We've already got one that's come in, and we'll get to that in a second. But send in your predictions, record predictions. Also, we're going to have some fun with other predictions, like, who maybe could be the leading rusher, who's a player that we're not talking about right now that maybe we should be or that you think's going to be a star. We've certainly focused on a lot of players, but, last year we weren't focusing on Terrell Vaughn. He ended up being the second leading receiver and, a bunch of other stuff. So who are guys that we aren't talking about that we should be? Who's going to be a defensive leader? Who's going to be a leader on the defensive side and tackles, sacks? Those kind of things, because we'll be going over those questions later in the show along with our game-by-game predictions. But without further ado.
Well, and I know.
Oh, no, we're going to do some ado.
Well, I just could say that I know you threw that out on Twitter, so you got some reactions there.
Yeah, so we'll be reading those.
We'll incorporate those in the course of the show. So you can reply to Jason on Twitter. You can text into the show 435-339-0321. Game by game predictions. What's your overall win-loss record for Utah State University this upcoming season?
Yeah. We do have. Let's get to these first couple texts since they've come in, and then we'll hit our first game talking about Iowa. 2444 saying, excited to hear both of your predictions for USU football this season. I have the Aggies going 8-4. I think the overall record could really hinge on the 3-game stretch against Air Force, James Madison, and UConn. Assuming that the record will be 1-1 going in that stretch, well, that's 3 games.
Assuming that record 1-1 going into that stretch.
Okay. Then they could enter the rest of the season anywhere from 1-4 to 4-1. Okay. Now that I decided to read the whole text to get the context. I'll be honest, I think with that...
good insight.
One of my questions was, is there a game the season could hinge on? And I don't think he already gave my answer for the most part. Now, I talked about a specific game, but it's in that stretch that he talks about. It's in that stretch. But we'll get to that in a minute. 9310, he's texting and says 5 wins, so I assume a 5-7 season. That's the best you can do there. So, let's...
Okay, 5242 gave us a score prediction for next week.
For Iowa. So he's got, for next weekend, I got Iowa 24, USU 13. I don't think that would be the worst result for Utah State.
No, I think that would be a solid showing.
Getting 13 points on that Iowa defense, I think that would be solid.
6133 just texting in 7 wins, including a bowl game.
There you go. I did not. Well, I'm going to keep quiet for a second because that'll reveal what my record may be.
All right, so game 1, Utah State on the road into Big Ten country, taking on Iowa. As we've mentioned, a program with a little bit of a cloud over it right now. But still, it's a Big Ten team. It's a top 25 team into the preseason. I just have a few too many questions about Utah State, particularly on defense, that I just, even with those losses, personnel and uncertainty for Iowa, I just think it'll be a little bit tough for Utah State to do what they want to do in their season opener, so I'm going to give Utah State a loss.
Yeah, so this is one of my games that I'm just writing in pen as a loss. I just, with some of these question marks with Iowa at quarterback and also losing defensive tackle, that's kind of opening the door a little bit. But Utah State, they're already shaky in their history against Power 5 teams. You know, Anderson's done a little bit better in that respect, especially in 2021. But I just, Iowa, they're 25th, and they've got a really great defense. That's the biggest thing, is their defense is really good. I know we're optimistic about the offense, but I'm having a hard time seeing a path to victory for the Aggies, and that's the key. If I'm going to pick them to win, I have to see a reason that they're going to win, a logical through line, and I just don't see it beyond the possibility of the Aggies are just way better than I think they are. That's the only way they win this game, is if they're just way better than I think they are.
I think with the recent news, I think this game will be closer than I thought it was going to be 2-3 weeks ago. But so I think Utah State can be competitive in it, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah,
I know there's been times where Utah State has some momentum and excitement as they go on the road or take on a P5 opponent. We're all excited about it. I'm not there.
Yeah, if I was down 2 quarterbacks, that helps, because then you're limiting, Iowa's offense is already catching tons of strays last year for how bad it was. And if they're that bad this year, then yeah, that's going to keep Utah State in range. But you still got to deal with that defense.
Right. The defense is pretty much still intact.
Yeah. So it's like, I just don't see Utah State putting up enough points. Like again, if Iowa's offense doesn't perform well, then yeah, you're going to spend the whole game within a touchdown or two. But you still got to score the touchdown or two, and I have a hard time seeing the Aggies, really being able to outscore the Iowa offense, as inept as it potentially could be, if those injury concerns at quarterback, lead them to starting like a third stringer.
4086 texting in 8 wins, including a bowl win. Wishful thinking.
6133, he's got 7 wins, including a bowl game.
4086 now sends an amendment. 6 wins, including a bowl game.
You got pessimistic. You can't do that on us. It's okay. You can have last minute. You texted him pretty quick afterwards, so it's like we both changed our minds halfway through our predictions. So
yeah, so just the opener looks like a little bit too tough for us. I mean, it's a preseason top 25 team. Iowa normally really tough at the gate, and they normally garner a lot of national attention early. They tend to fade a little bit when they get into Big Ten play, but Big Ten is tough.
Yeah, there's a reason they struggle when they get into Big Ten play. But yeah, being good in their non-conference, that doesn't bode well for Utah State.
No. So the following week, they come home and they host Idaho State, team from Pocatello. There's going to be some fans that will travel, and we'll be there. That'll help some attendance. But this will be a game where Utah State's licking its wounds a little bit from last year and what happened against an FCS opponent, and after what would have happened the previous week at Iowa. And I think Utah State comes out and imposes its will and tries to showcase what they can be all about this year.
Yeah, the thing is, Weber State's a good FCS team, so that's the kind of team you can lose to if you're having a bad day, or if you're just having a bad, section of the season. If you're Utah State like they were last year. Idaho State's not even a good FCS team. So I just don't see them beating Utah State. So, yeah, I've got Utah State winning this game, probably winning it big, 40-plus points, hold them under 17 points probably, 17 or under points, depending on how good the defense is doing, and also, blowout snaps in the fourth quarter and whatnot. So, yeah, don't feel like I need to explain why I think Utah State's going to beat a mediocre to below average FCS team in week 2.
There will be some reunions there. There's been a number of Aggie football players who have come through Idaho State over the years. Some Aggie coaches and administrators who have had a hand in things that there in Pocatello. Coach Cragthorpe has strong connections there historically. Currently, Coach Mark Weber is on that coaching staff at Idaho State, who previously was the offensive line coach in Logan. So interesting little reunion going on there with Coach Weber back in the Valley.
There's always going to be a lot of potential connections there. There are neighbors to the north, so you expect there to be certain connections. Between these, just geographically they're close, so it makes sense.
Yeah. So Utah State should win this one by a couple of touchdowns.
I'd say by more than a couple of touchdowns, I would hope.
Yeah.
Looking at the text line, 9315. If you're like those guys down south, your predictions would spell national champion football. So my prediction is we won't be national champions, and we will have an above-average record. So.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Above average record. So
So-
that would mean 7 wins?
I think he sent in. Didn't he send in a record prediction like yesterday? Saying, or maybe a couple days ago, saying they're going to go like 9 wins. I'm scrolling up and I can't find it.
By the way, Idaho State is expected to be one of the worst teams in FCS.
I know. I was to say, like, you just.
I'm just looking up a projection here, and they're not.
Yeah, I know. I was
Not very
curious.
high.
I was curious about Idaho State. And I think Phil Steele has an FCS magazine, and I think I had access to it. And I was looking into it, and I was like, "What? Just to get an idea." And I don't remember where they were at, but they were pretty low.
There's somebody put together a table with all of the SP Plus projections. ESPN puts together an SP Plus, and they did it for all FBS and FCS all together. And so there's a number of FCS schools that are above FBS schools, like Weber State. They would come in at like number 86 overall, just behind San Diego State, and pretty good good distance between them and Utah State. USU is at 140 on this list, but Idaho State on this list comes in at 240. Bit of a gap.
Yeah, not very good.
No.
9952 says, I'm not very optimistic this year, and I hope I'm wrong. I only see 4 wins. And there's parts of me that when I look at the schedules, like I could see, the Aggies winning only 4 games, but I'm going to be slightly more optimistic. And speaking of which, let's go to the third game. Air Force, September 15th at Air Force. Eric, what do you got in this game?
Utah State has, in more modern history, played pretty well against Air Force. But I don't know that I have that level of confidence that they can do that this time. Air Force has a lot of returning guys. This is going to be a tough test for Utah State. It's early in the season. It's always tough to play Air Force early in the season. This is on a little bit of a shorter week. This game's going to be on a Friday. I've got Utah State with the loss here. It's a tough way to open up your conference play against a team like Air Force. It's such a unique style, but I couldn't put a W there for USU.
So I have in plenty of recent years talked about how Utah State struggled to play Air Force, especially on the road. But I'm going to go back to more recent history and look at how Utah State, and specifically Blake Anderson, seems to do against Air Force. This is one area where maybe I'm hyper-fixating on one stat and trying to base an entire game off of it. I wonder if Blake Anderson has just cracked the nut that is Air Force's defense. Because you look at it, Air Force, in the last 2 seasons where they've had a dang good defense, in games not against Utah State, they've allowed an average of about 13.4 points per game. That may be just overall, maybe including Utah State, but they're in the low teens.
Less than 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, in terms of points allowed per game. In the last 2 games, going up against Blake Anderson, Air Force has allowed 83 points to the Aggies. That's not just one outing. That's 2 outings, one of which was at Air Force. So I'm getting the feeling that Blake Anderson's kind of got Air Force down as far as ability to get yards and get points on the Falcons, which is key because the thing is, Blake Anderson's defenses haven't exactly done super well at stopping Air Force. But I think with that, just Blake Anderson seemingly knowing how to get past Air Force's really good defense, I'm going to say the Aggies pull a bit of a surprise here and get a win.
Wow.
So there's my first optimistic surprise there, is I think the Aggies are going to go out there September 15th, get a nice shootout win at Air Force.
That would be awesome. That would be huge. That would be massive. See, that kind of enters into, there's a 4-game stretch. Really, 4 games in a row. And it starts with Air Force. That could really determine the whole season. Because it's at Air Force, if it was in Logan, I might be a little bit closer to giving Utah State a W there. But because it's on the road, I'm just going to give it a loss for the Aggies.
And I understand that there's games where I feel like, it being on the road pushes me over the edge one way or the other. But I just think there's maybe something about Air Force that Blake Anderson seems to know. It's like, hey,
Yeah,
I know how to get yards
that's
against
fair
this
enough. I
team.
mean, the Aggies have played well against Air Force. Matt Wells got the team playing well against Air Force.
So, going back to the text line 5242, bit off the beaten track. Who do you guys have winning the national title? It says my sleeper is FSU. Assuming means Florida State, or is he talking about Fresno State?
I would imagine Florida State.
I don't really believe in sleepers for national titles. Those don't really come out of nowhere. It's just the way college football is. I mean,
Yeah.
you just pick someone out of Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, Georgia. Pick somebody. I haven't done a whole lot of research at teams at the top because, frankly, I don't care. Most of my research has been on Utah State and the Mountain West. I'll watch the national championship.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's a little bit of controversy at LSU all of a sudden. Could Michigan
I don't trust
pull it off?
I don't trust Michigan to pull that off.
No, I mean, they've got to Harbaugh's got to be kind of suspended the first couple of games.
Yeah, I think you go with Georgia, Alabama. Ohio State's been good. It's just one of those.
I mean, if there's a sleeper in there, for me, it would be USC.
Yeah, I don't trust anybody out of the Pac-12 though.
I think Pac-12 is going to be tough this year, real tough.
Yeah. So I don't know if I could settle on somebody. I haven't done enough research to say I think this is going to be the team that wins the national title. So I don't know if I just go with safe pick because I don't say Georgia. So aren't they the preseason number
They're
one?
preseason favorites, yeah.
So I'll be boring. I know you wanted something exciting after I picked Utah State to beat Air Force, but
2444. I saw this on Twitter yesterday, and we forgot to mention it, so I'm glad you're bringing it up. As someone who went to USU for undergrad and St. Louis U for grad school, it's interesting to see that they'll be meeting on the hardwood this season, as reported by Rocco Miller earlier this week. I wonder if the scheduling of the game was facilitated by the fact that they just played in soccer over the weekend. Either way, it should be a great matchup between one of the best teams in the Mountain West and one of the best in the A10. For those not familiar with SLU, it's a quality basketball program with multiple NCAA tournament appearances over the last decade or so, including a run of 3 straight appearances in the round of 32. That was 2012 to 2014. I'll be looking forward to the game, even if I find myself somewhat conflicted as to my rooting interests.
Yeah, no, that can certainly be interesting. I think my brother ran into that where Utah State in hockey, they play Northern Colorado. My brother went to Utah State and then did grad school at Northern Colorado. So I know he somewhat understands that feeling. But, yeah, I know St. Louis, it is a nice little quality mid-major program. So it'll be interesting to see how that game goes.
One of the coolest-looking mascots, one of the weirdest names for a mascot.
What was it again?
The Billikens.
Billikens? Oh, I didn't even. Because I looked them up the other day when I saw that report. Just getting a little preview of them, how they'd been. Because I remembered they'd been I remember seeing them in the NCAA tournament a few times. But I was looking for details. Guess I didn't see the mascot.
I haven't seen anything official out of Utah State, but Rocco Miller has been pretty spot on with several scheduling events for out of the non-conference for Utah State and other schools.
He's pretty much built like most of what looks like it's going to be most of Utah State's non-conference schedule. He's reported like 12 games.
Yes.
Which is about how many non-conference games Utah State will play. I've got them all on a spreadsheet, but he's got them on his own little website there. We do need to take a break. We're really overdue for a break. We've only gotten 3 games into our predictions. But we've had a lot of great interactions from the text line. We'll certainly welcome that as we continue throughout this hour. But coming up next, we're revealing number 2 on the top 25 Aggies of 2023. That'll be coming up next. Don't go away.
For more than a century, couples have shopped at S.E. Needham Jewelers. Known for a large selection of beautiful diamonds, we now have both natural and lab-grown diamonds. You're sure to find a diamond engagement ring that will fit your budget. The possibilities today are endless as you select the perfect ring. Show her you'll cherish her forever with a diamond either natural or lab-grown from the store where Utah gets engaged. S.E. Needham Jewelers, middle of the block, at the sign of the clock.
Les Olson IT structured cabling is second to none. Tired of old and inefficient cabling? Have an upgrade or remodel planned? Building a new network from the ground up? We offer the very best in low-voltage cabling installation, including data, phone, fiber optic, and more. Ask us how to get your free consultation today.
Les Olsen IT.
Saturday on Compass Media Network's coverage of the NFL. The regular season is in sight. The Dallas Cowboys host the Las Vegas Raiders in the preseason finale. Hi, this is Jerry Recco. Join Kevin Ray, Danny White, and myself for all the action as Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys get one final tune-up against Josh McDaniels and the undefeated Raiders. It's the Dallas Cowboys and the Las Vegas Raiders. If it's the NFL, it's right here.
Pre-game begins Saturday at 5:30 on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, The Fan.
This Tuesday, April Davis will change the world. She doesn't know that yet. All she knows is that she went to justserve.org and volunteered an hour of her time. Browsing through dozens of service opportunities in her community, April decided to spend her Tuesday evening serving dinner to mothers and their children at a transitional house. She doesn't know she'll be serving a particular mother and daughter who will be spending their first night in this home. April doesn't know that the hot meal she'll serve is the first this mother and daughter will have had in a week, or that the simple smile she'll offer as she serves them will help them realize that things are going to be all right. Which is why this Tuesday, April Davis will change the world. See the difference you can make. Sign up for service opportunities in your community. Visit justserve.org. JustServe.org is provided as a service by The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
If you're feeling dizzy or off balance, you're not alone. 35% of adults over 40 in the U.S. have a problem with their inner ear, and many conditions go undiagnosed and untreated. But there's hope. For more information, call 800-837-8428 or visit liferebalanced.org and discover a life rebalanced. That's 800-837-8428 or liferebalanced.org, sponsored by the Vestibular Disorders Association.
Talking the sports you care about. The Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
Welcome back, Full Court Press. Jason Walker and Eric Frandsen. We've been going over our season predictions for Utah State. We've gone through 3 games so far. So far, I have the Aggies at a 2-1 record. Eric at 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
Both have Iowa as a loss. Idaho State as a win. We're split on Air Force. I have them as a win, and Eric has that as a loss. But we're going to take a pause on that and talk about our top 25 Aggies. We're down to number 2. Which means tomorrow is the release of number 1. But here to talk about and introduce the number 2 player on our top 25 Aggies of 2023, here's Hall of Fame broadcaster Al Lewis.
The Cache Valley Media Group's countdown of the top 25 Aggie football players for the year 2023, down to the last 2. And at number 2, boy, can he fire knife dance, but he also plays great football. He's defensive lineman Hale Motuapawaka. Hale is 6'1", 280 pounds, a senior from Honolulu, Hawaii, an Aggie 4-year letterman. Number 2, Hale Motuapawaka on the Utah State defensive front.
Yes, Hale Motuapawaka. The senior, or technically graduate defensive end. I don't know what he's in his final year of eligibility. His 6th season with the Aggies. His career with the Aggies began all the way back in 2018. Appeared in a couple of games. Ended up redshirting. But basically since then, he's been a regular in the defensive line rotation. He was kind of a backup in 2019. But then started becoming a bit of a full-time starter in 2020, especially in the last 2 years where he's pretty much started every game he's played. So I think he's got 46 total appearances with the Aggies, 28 starts, and if I'm not mistaken, he has the most snaps played among any Aggie on this team. So the most experienced player both in terms of years, snaps played. I think you have only Stephen Kotzenle has more starts than him. So very experienced and also, very good as you'd expect of someone who's managed to start 28 times, in his career.
Yeah, at times he can be a one-man wrecking crew. I mean, last year he had 35 tackles, and he had 5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. Was able to speed up the quarterback a number of times. In 2021, he had a couple of 2.5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. And this is somebody who benefited last year from having some speed edge rushers by him. And we're learning about the guys that are going to be on either side of him, on the edges. But there's going to be a little bit more on his shoulders as those guys settle in and who those players will be. But Halle in the middle can be very disruptive. And, you heard Al talk about this fire dance, and I think that always gets talked about with Halle. He's an international award-winning fire dance champion, and that does actually, in my mind, relate in a good way to what he does on the defensive line, because you have to be good with your hands and movement and knowing where your body is and every extension of your body. If you're throwing fire knives around everywhere so you don't impale yourself, but it means he's nimble and he's quick at what he needs to do with his hands to get his body in the right position and get offensive linemen out of the way.
Yeah, I think it also speaks to work ethic. If you're able to work hard enough to be the best in the world at something, it doesn't necessarily mean you can be the best in the world at everything, but it means you got the work ethic to, put your mind to something, get better, and improve. And Holly's been doing that in football. Actually, I believe he mentioned he was interviewing Al Lewis. I think Holly ended up taking second or third or whatnot in the competitions this year in fire knife because he's been focusing on football. He hasn't had as much time to focus on the cool awesomeness that is fire knife dancing. Yes. So he's been focused on football, making himself better. He put on some more weight this season. He's going to be harder to move around inside. He's going to be better at getting into the backfield. Already a guy who 8 tackles for loss. It was his second straight season getting at least 8 tackles for loss. You mentioned the 5 sacks. That was a career high last year, as were the 35 tackles. So he's a guy that, despite playing defensive tackle, which is a stat that can be somewhat notorious for not putting up tons of stats, he's kind of still been able to do that a little bit, where he was second on the team in sacks last year, and I think he was 3rd or 4th in tackles for loss. So he's a guy that's making an impact there at defensive tackle, and he's going to be doing that again, and a lot of people are recognizing that. He was first team on Phil Steele's, All Mountain West team. He was second team on Athlon, and I forgot to check all the other 10 different, websites that I've looked for All Mountain West teams, but he's generally recognized as, one of the best players in this team and arguably the best player on defense for the Aggies.
Yeah, and recognized among peers throughout the Mountain West as a very high-impact player for what he does on that defensive front. So if you've got a defensive lineman that is really disruptive, man, that makes life a lot easier for your linebackers because now you've created gaps that they can shoot through, or opposing offenses have to focus on what you're doing and you're taking attention away from other things that they need to do. So Halle can do that, and been really fun watching him grow and develop as somebody who got time on the defensive line. We didn't see a lot of big impact plays from him earlier on, but every year he's gotten better and better and more impactful, and Aggies really need him to be impactful this year because of some of the youth and inexperience around him.
Yeah, probably one of the most underrated luxuries a team can have is a great interior defensive tackle. Because you always talk about you want an elite, quarterback, and then on defense, if you ask, someone what's the elite position you want, they'll say, pass rusher, something like that, or maybe a great linebacker. But people don't always appreciate just how, wonderful it is to have a consistent presence in a defensive tackle, and the Aggies have that. At the very least, we know they've got a quality starting defensive tackle. And that's something that they'll appreciate throughout the season.
6'1", 290 pounds. He wears number 8 on his jersey. It wasn't always that number. It used to be 92 that he used to wear, but he wears number 8, and he's number 2 on our list of top 25 Aggies for 2023.
All right, we're going to take another break, and on the other side, we're going to continue our predictions, starting with the Week 4 game against James Madison. That'll be coming up next. Don't go away.
Cache Valley Ear, Nose, and Throat, the Allergy Clinic and Hearing Aid Center are conveniently located at 2 locations, North Logan inside the new Three Peaks Medical Plaza and Providence on Gateway Drive. Doctors Benyon, Blotter, and Robinette, along with the entire staff, have over 75 years of combined medical experience, guaranteeing your family the very best patient care. Cache Valley Ear, Nose, and Throat serves all of northern Utah and southern Idaho and accepts most insurance products, including SelectMed. Go to CacheValleyENT.com for appointments and details. Cache Valley Ear, Nose, and Throat, North Logan and Providence.
Are you a renter looking for peace of mind and affordable insurance coverage? This is Matt Robbins with Quality First Insurance. As an independent auto owner's insurance agency, we have access to multiple insurance carriers and will give you options. We offer renters insurance policies that can be tailored to fit your needs. From protecting your personal belongings to liability coverage, Quality First has you covered. Call us today for a free quote. Auto owners and Quality First Insurance.
Hi, this is Sheriff Chad Jensen. As school starts, we want to remind all drivers there'll be more kids on the sidewalks and on the streets walking to school, more bikes on the streets than normal, and more cars in the school zones as the high school kids get back in session. We would encourage all drivers to slow down in the school zones and all areas surrounding the schools, pay attention to the school zones, and more importantly, be patient as more kids and there'll be different traffic patterns. Please join the Cache County Sheriff's Office in helping kids stay safe.
This is Nate Lamson with Valley Office Systems, your home team when local matters. Valley Office Systems is your local provider for all things office, copiers, printers, furniture, and document management. Proudly serving Cache Valley since 2007. Visit valleyofficesystems.com.
When you take a walk around your neighborhood and notice all the things that make it feel like home, like all the houses lined neatly together in a row, or your neighbor, Miss Rita, who always waves at you when you drive down the street, or that movie theater in the strip mall that might look a little worn down, but has the best popcorn you've ever tasted. One thing might be a little harder to notice, because somewhere tucked in that neat row of houses is hunger. It could be your next door neighbor, or your coworker, or your daughter's friend from school, because over 30 million Americans don't know where their next meal is coming from. Hunger lives in neighborhoods all around us, but it doesn't have to. At Albertsons Companies and Safeway Foundations, we are on a mission to provide 1 billion meals by 2030, because everyone should be welcome at the table. Learn more at nourishingneighbors.com. Let's break the cycle of hunger together.
From your first sunrise to the sunset of life, we are with you through life's journey. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. Visit socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
It doesn't matter who you root for. The Full Court Press has all the high school sports covered. The Full Court Press. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and online at 1069thefan.com.
Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker, going through our predictions for the 2023 football season for USU, game by game. We're not giving score predictions as much as just wins and losses. We've had a few people give us a score prediction here and there. But if you want to chime in and give us your season prediction for Utah State. How many wins, how many losses? 435-339-0321. 3486, by the way, texting in. Our offenses definitely put up points on Air Force, but how many points they put on us in the past 2 games?
A lot. I didn't put that in front of me, but that's the thing, is both were shootouts. So that's what I said. Utah State struggled to stop Air Force, both of those games. Heck, I think both games it was just defense just getting a turnover at the right time helped the Aggies win. So
yeah, Aggies struggled to stop their running attack, but Air Force couldn't figure out Utah State's passing game.
Yeah, for whatever reason. Heck, last year the offense wasn't even that good, and the Aggies were still putting up a bunch of points.
Yeah, that's very true.
I think the offense will be a little bit better this year, so I think the Aggies will definitely have a chance in that game, but I know I've got them a win, you got a loss. So that's one way where we're differing.
Yeah.
So I do have some, I'm going to read some responses to the tweet I sent out. A couple of score predictions. Sam McConkey says 7-5, and Aaron Newhall says 5-7. Says which will be an upgrade from what I really think of 3-9.
Oh, no.
So he's trying to be optimistic, and he says 5-7. So yeah, I know there's a wide range of thoughts you can have on this, and they'd be very reasonable. You can be very reasonable and think this team's going to win 3 games. You can be very reasonable and think this team will win 8 games. Like, there's a lot of diverging thought, and it's just based on how you have analyzed this team so far and your experience and your study of, how Utah State does historically, how the Mountain West does historically.
Yeah, knowledge of their opponents,
but
where the game is played.
Speaking of history, or I guess in this case, a lack thereof, Utah State and James Madison meeting for the first time ever on the gridiron. So it'll be at Utah State. It'll be September 23rd. James Madison winning 8 games last year. Really, they jumped into FBS. It was their first season of FBS, and they rolled. 8 wins. Looking pretty good there. But how will they look this year? They've lost a couple of key players. Lost their quarterback. They lost a couple of other leading players from that really good team. So they've got to reload. So I think for that reason, and also just I'm being optimistic and because the Aggies are at home, I've got the Aggies winning this one.
Okay.
I just think that, I don't have any history for James Madison as far as knowing how they're going to reload in terms of the FBS level. They've been really good at reloading at the FCS level. They've done really well reloading there, but how are they going to do as far as reloading and then traveling on the road to face Utah State? And so I think they're going to be a little underwhelming from what they were last year, which, Utah State, they've got to replace a bunch of stuff too. But I think with James Madison potentially not being as good as they were last year, that's going to give the Aggies a chance to, be at home, play, and if I think they're going to go down and beat Air Force, I don't know if I can justify not having them beat James Madison at home.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. This is one of those fence games. This is that stretch of games for Utah State where in the middle of the season where I just really wrestled. And for me, this was more of a wrestle than the Air Force one. James Madison, yeah, they're new to the FBS level, but they came in and introduced themselves pretty handily last year. And the game is in Logan, so give the Aggies some credit in that one. But here's why I'm giving Utah State a loss in this game. This is a team that is accustomed to winning. They have a winning culture. They have a winning program. Even though they moved up in classification, they still found ways to win. And that's what they believe in. That's how they understand how things are done in their program. And I think it will be a close game. But I think in the end, I've just got a few too many concerns about Utah State. Maybe those are answered earlier on. Maybe this is a win, and I'm eating crow, and I will deliciously eat it. But for me, I've got this one as a loss for Utah State.
Yeah, I think for me, it's hard for me to justify exactly why I'm having this as a win over James Madison. I just feel like I've got a hunch that the Aggies are going to be better than they're getting credit for, and a hunch that James Madison's going to be worse than people think they will be. And then
because there's some hype around James Madison.
Yeah.
I mean, it's built off of what they did last year, but, I mean, they kind of deserve it.
And that's where I'm going. Like, as far as, being good last year, that's not the greatest, indicator of success for G5 programs.
True.
There's only a few that are able to reload every year. Boise State's one of them. So I can't just say, all right, you were good last year, therefore you're definitely going to be good this year. I can't say that about any just about any G5 team, even the Aggies included.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely room for Utah State to win this game, and so I'm going to pick them that way. So funnily enough, you've got the Aggies at 1-3 to start the season, and I've got them at 3-1. So
yes.
We've got diverging paths here.
Yes, we do.
With this season, I wonder if we're going to diverge in this next game. September 30th at UConn. So my thought was I looked at this James Madison and UConn game, and I kind of went into it thinking, Utah State's probably going to get one of these games. And so even though I think it's probably more likely Utah State wins that UConn game, I didn't feel comfortable picking them to beat James Madison and UConn. So I ended up picking this game to be a loss. I think there is justification for that. UConn's returning a lot of talent on that team, especially on offense. They're returning some key defensive players. They're returning a stud linebacker, on that team, and it's going to be on the road. So I think there's definitely room for Utah State to lose on the road at UConn, even if they do wind up beating Air Force and James Madison. But struggled against UConn last year at home, and they've got another year of building that program back up, under a new coach.
See, this is another one I was on the fence. I had 3 games in a row. So this is number 2 where I was really on the fence. Air Force, kind of, but James Madison, UConn, Colorado State, really on the fence. But ultimately, I swung my leg over onto the winning side this time. That is a long flight, and it's a long travel to get there. But I think by this point in Utah State's season, they're going to be frustrated by some of their losses. They're going to believe that they have more talent than how it's coming through, and they will know in the back of their minds that they beat this UConn team last year. Even though Utah State had some serious issues going on, they still found a way to beat this UConn team. Now, this is a UConn team that found a way to get to a bowl game that surprised a number of people. Nobody predicted UConn before the season as a bowl team. But they are trying to change their culture there. And really, they're trying to audition for a P5 invite somewhere. And they're trying to change the culture and the attitude about what UConn is. But I just have a feeling about Utah State making that trip and kind of rallying the troops after a frustrating start to the season and finally getting things put together enough to come home on a long flight with the taste of victory in their mouths.
All right, so trying to keep track of where we're at. So you've got the Aggies at 2-3 through this point. I have them at 3-2, so we diverge once again in this case. So that's, I think, 3 straight games where we've disagreed. We'll see if we get back on track with this next game, Colorado State. Now, you said you were kind of on the fence with this. I did not hesitate for a second to put this down as a win for Utah State. I know that Colorado State games are basically cursed. Utah State, Colorado State games are just cursed.
There's been a weird history between the Aggies and the Rams.
So, yeah, we've had a game canceled. We had, last year, I know it wasn't quite as crazy, except, the Aggies going down to their, 4th-string quarterback. And, then we have a couple of other crazy endings.
Weird delay when Colorado State should have won on a field goal, and they ended up losing the game.
And then, the catch that was illegal touching and all that kind of stuff. But the thing is, and I know some people are fairly high on Colorado State, or at least higher than they kind of were on last year's team. But this is a game that's at home. The Aggies beat Colorado State last year with their 4th-string quarterback. I just see Utah State as just being better. I know they're going to have a pretty dang good quarterback-wide receiver combo, and that could be incredibly dangerous. It was dangerous for them in 2018 because they had the problem there. It was Preston Williams, I think, where that almost ended them. But I just think Utah State's just better than Colorado State. It's going to be at home. It could be a trap game, again, because of how cursed this matchup is. But even with that, the supposedly cursed matchups, the Aggies have won, 3-4 straight games against Colorado State? I know they've won 3 of those matchups that we talked about. Last year, where they're down to their 4th-stringer, crazy missed field goal, crazy illegal touching. The Aggies keep winning despite how cursed this matchup is.
It is an interesting history between these two schools. The reason I'm on the fence, last year it was a hot mess. There were players coming in. They transferred a lot of players over from Nevada. It was a program that was in wide disarray from the previous coach. But Jay Norvell, this is a really important year for him because last year, high expectations that fell way flat. So I think this is going to be a little bit more of a rebound year for the Rams. And I think Utah State, Colorado State, kind of similar in where they are with their expectations coming into the season. What pushed it over the edge for me is that this is a home game for USU, and this is a win for the Aggies, and I think it'll be close though. I think that there's been some quirky games between these two teams over the years. This could be another one of those, but I am going to end up giving the W to the Aggies.
All right, we need to take another break. So far we're just over halfway through our predictions. You've got the Aggies getting back to 3-3 after week 6.
Yep.
I guess we're exactly halfway. I've got them at 4-2. So we'll continue this on the other side of a break. Don't go away. We'll have more on the Full Court Press.
While you're doing whatever it is you do, we're testing, retesting, engineering, and re-engineering to keep up with you. We run together.
JM Mechanical is your local Trane dealer. Fast 24-hour cooling and heating service available in Box Elder, Cache, and Franklin County with a 100% satisfaction guarantee and upfront pricing. Call JM Mechanical at 563-6267.
It's hard to stop a train.
Are you looking for a high-quality beauty service at an affordable price? Look no further than New Horizons Beauty College. That's right. You can get the same quality service of traditional salons at a lower price, all while supporting the education of our future beauty professionals. So whether you're in need of a new haircut, hair color, or any other beauty service, come to New Horizons Beauty College and let our students work their magic on you. Call 435-753-9779 to schedule an appointment. Walk-ins welcome. New Horizons Beauty College. Create your own individuality.
It's a bird! It's a plane!
The Dan Patrick Show.
Dan Patrick.
Yeah!
College football is playing a game of risk in the United States, where you roll the dice, you come in, and you just wipe out people. Hey, we want that state. And it's about states. You're acquiring football in Colorado. You're acquiring football in Southern California. This is the strategy here.
The Dan Patrick Show.
Dan and the Danettes and you.
Weekday mornings from 7 to 10 on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan. Join the show by calling 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
If you're a do-it-yourself kind of guy, then your locally owned Napa Auto Parts store, it's a good place to know. Napa features all the best brands, Croyle, Amsoil, Schaefer, BG, Seafoam. You can find the parts, find the oil you need to keep your car and equipment running at its best. So we've gone through the first half of the Aggies football schedule, giving our game-by-game predictions. So far, I'm a little more optimistic. I have the Aggies at 4-2. Eric Frandsen slightly more pessimistic, 3-3. So not by much, but
yeah, 3-3 for the first half. Victories over Idaho State, UConn, and Colorado State for me. Losses against Iowa, Air Force, and James Madison.
See, I've got the Aggies losing to Iowa, so same there. But I have them beating Air Force and James Madison, although losing at UConn. So we're differing on quite a few of these, win or loss. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, my thoughts on each of these games are probably going to change after like 2 weeks.
Yes.
I'll either be changing.
Oh, absolutely. We'll know a lot more about this team once they start playing somebody else.
Yeah, I might be changing some of these to wins or all of them to losses. A few more had responses to a tweet that I sent out, just asking people for their own predictions. Andrew Wilson says 8-4. So we're optimistic.
Very optimistic.
McKay Murphy saying 9-4. So she's including a bowl game in there.
Okay.
So very optimistic. And then Wes Mangum going 4-8. So
flipping it the other direction.
Swinging back to pessimism. And well, that's the thing. Reasonable people are disagreeing on whether the Aggies are just going to be bad or whether they're going to be good.
Right. It's not like we're a few games off here. Like, I think they're 5-7, or I think they're 7-5. We're all the way from 8 to 9 to as low as 3-4.
Yeah, those are
just wide variance.
Like one of those is a season that gets you an extension. The other one is a season that gets you fired or put on the hot seat. Like
yes,
such a wild like Blake Anderson goes 9-4. then, he's the next great coach. He'll have had a couple of great seasons and one, mediocre one. If he goes 3-9, then all of a sudden it's like, well, was 2021 just a fluke? Is he on the hot seat then? Probably is on the hot seat at that point. Obviously, he keeps his job going in the next season, see how it goes, and determine from there. But people won't be happy with him if he only wins 3-4 games. They'll call his whole ability to run the program in question. But the complete opposite could be true if he pulls off a great season.
Yeah, which is entirely possible. Absolutely entirely possible. There's a lot of winnable games here, and there is a path for Utah State.
Yeah, I like the schedule in terms of it's not super hard, and there is a path to having a winning record. But we're going to get into that more in the next hour. Don't go away.
I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise. When we think of impact defenders in the NFL, we normally think of cornerbacks or an edge rusher. But with spacing now a priority on offenses, defensive tackles are now in that conversation. Aaron Donald has 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, and Dexter Lawrence, Quinnen Williams, and Jeffrey Simmons also awarded contracts north of $90 million this offseason. But one crucial name is missing, the Chiefs' Chris Jones. Jones has multiple 15-plus sack seasons on his resume, but after a contract dispute, he's hinted at sitting out until Week 8 in an attempt to land a new extension. With a 2-time MVP under center, it's tough to say Kansas City is in trouble, but in a conference with Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Trevor Lawrence, you're going to need all the help you can get to put pressure on the quarterback. Kansas City will be wise to keep Jones happy. Kansas City may have its hands full slowing down an AFC elite stable of quarterbacks if they don't. I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise.